All right, here we go. Another episode of Black and White with James and Eric.
But who's black and who's white?
What do you mean who's black and who's white?
Well, you know that Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah, I know. You don't see color.
Oh, I see color.
Yeah, I know you do.
Oh, come on, you talking to me. I don't see color.
Well, then you be the black guy.
I'm a nice caramel color.
No, you're not. Caramel?
It's not really black, and you're not really white.
That's true. I'm toast. That's real lightly toasted, and yours is burned.
You're
toast.
I'm
toasty.
Pale with some red splashes of red speckle.
Red?
Peach.
Peach. I'll go with peach.
Okay.
Well, according to Crayola a few years ago, that was called flesh. It wasn't peach. It was flesh.
You know what's really funny? Now that you bring it up, women in color palettes.
Yes.
Okay. So what color is my ceiling? Is it white or is it eggshell?
Well, I don't know. There's hundreds of shades of white.
And actually, maybe, but
listen. You're talking to a guy who works in the home interior decorating.
That's right.
industry.
You have to know these
I
things.
know all these colors and
palettes.
And
yeah. When a female comes in and says, "I want eggshell," you don't argue about eggshell being white or white being
that is
eggshell.
correct.
You just tell her what she wants.
There's ivory and there's parchment and
there's beige. All right. So what are the different shades of beige?
The different shades of beige?
Yeah.
There's a million of them. There's some called peat moss.
Peat moss.
Yeah. There's beige out the wazoo. What color beige would you like?
I don't want any color beige. Okay.
All right. So we've established that you're the black guy and I'm the peach guy.
Yeah.
I'm the flesh colored guy and you're the brown man.
Caramel colored.
Caramel? What caramel? Caramel's like light tan. Caramel, like a caramel apple. You don't look like a caramel apple.
Caramel apples, are they really caramel? Yeah, they are.
But they got caramel wrapped around the apple.
But I'm talking about that color.
I'm talking about that color too.
I'm not that color?
You're Hershey's chocolate.
Okay, all right.
It's not caramel.
Okay, I am sweet.
Yeah, that's what I meant. All right. Hey, do you remember a few months ago we went to Cleveland together, you and I. Took the hour drive.
To see Dr. Cornel West.
Dr. Cornel West.
One of my heroes.
Because about a year ago, I went, it was at a church in Cleveland. It was Olivet Institutional Baptist Church. And
I remember that.
Yeah, you know what?
Who's that?
I don't know, but we're gonna hang on for just a second and pick this right back up. All right, I'm sorry about the interruption there. So
we had to sell some carpet.
Yes, because we're doing this at work.
Yeah, the studio's is a totally
my desk.
The studio is located as a totally carpet.
All right. Anyways, so I had gone about a year and a half ago. I went to see the Reverend Al Sharpton speak at this church, and it was after the verdict of a Cleveland police officer who was on trial for shooting a young black couple. He was a white police officer who was shooting a young black couple.
And was the black couple, was this the Tamir Rice shooting?
No, that was a different one. Although Tamir Rice's family was there,
okay.
that had not gone to trial yet.
Okay.
That was still fairly fresh. This was.
This was the one. This was
3 or 4 months after.
Was this the one where like 105?
Yeah, I think it was 82 police cars were involved in the chase.
And the people
Cleveland,
were shot,
Cleveland Heights,
and the people
East
were
Cleveland.
shot like 105 shots were fired.
Yeah, or more.
One officer jumped on the hood of the car.
That was Officer Michael Brelo, who was on trial for a bunch of felonies
and emptied his weapon into the vehicle.
Correct,
and
killing both the driver and
this was a Black Lives Matter thing, correct? Olivet.
No. It was just a thing. It was just Al Sharpton coming.
Okay.
And actually, a lot of people. I went because I've seen him on TV and I've seen him over the years, all the way back to Tawana Brawley and all that in the '80s when he was heavy and wore that velour sweatsuit,
and the Jerry curl.
And had the Jerry curl going, but that was
curl.
the style, that was. But yeah, back when he was
Jerry curls
when he was hanging in Brooklyn before it was gentrified, wait a
minute, when did they gentrify Brooklyn? When they put that big basketball stadium in?
No, when they threw the black people out and let the white people move in for 10 times the money.
Yeah, but that's when they put the stadium in Brooklyn.
In that, the arena, sure, in that era.
That's when Jay-Z got pimped.
Okay, I don't know a whole lot about the pimping of Jay-Z.
You don't?
I'm not familiar
Oh my
with
gosh,
it.
Jay-Z was a business
Listen,
partner.
can I just tell you, I don't care either, so
Well, maybe our listeners, no, they probably don't.
I doubt it.
Okay, so finish what you were saying.
So anyways, I went to see Al Sharpton because I had heard, he's a rebel rouser and he's gonna stir the pot and race bait and all that. And I thought, well, let me go see for myself. He's in Cleveland. He's only an hour away. So I went after work.
So you took the bait.
I went to see for myself. I don't want to hear a clip on the news. I don't want to hear that one sentence where
You want the whole story.
I want the whole story. I want all the quotes and I want them in context. So I went.
Are you saying that the news doesn't do that?
I was about the only white guy in the room. I don't know
So-
how many people were. The place was packed.
So about the only white guy. So how many other white people were in the room?
I don't know if there were any.
Just you? You think it was only you?
I don't know.
Probably reporters, but they don't count. Let's talk about general audience.
I didn't even see reporters. There were reporters outside.
So the reporters didn't even get the whole
And
story.
reporters had talked to him during the day, which is how I found out he was going to be there.
Okay.
A friend that works for Channel 8, so I called her and said, "Hey, what's going on?"
Who's
And
your
she
friend at
told
Channel
me,
8?
and it doesn't matter. And she
Why
told
not? What? Maybe I want to talk.
me,
Okay.
and she told me that he was going to be there and what was going on and the times and all that. So I went. So I liked it. I had a chance to meet him and talk to him briefly for 3 minutes afterwards. I was very well received. I was very well treated by the volunteers that were seating, the ushers that were seating people, the staff at the church.
And what did you take from his comments?
The other
From
folks there. Well, his comments were phenomenal. I mean, he was great. He was definitely speaking to the crowd that had assembled. I mean, he was definitely talking to a poor or lower middle class audience. He was definitely speaking to a black audience.
What was the message?
Part of his message was, well, he spoke for almost 45 minutes, so there were many messages in there, but one of them that sticks with me is he had a quote that was, downtown Cleveland has been revitalized over and over and over, but now especially with Quicken Loans Arena, the baseball field there, where the Indian
Jacobs
Stadium, the Brown Stadium, all of the museums, the theaters have all been redone. I mean, they've dumped a ton, but they've dumped a ton of money into fixing everything up with the new on-ramps and all the infrastructure, the highway system, because the Republican National Convention was going to be there in this past July. So they wanted to make a good, they have to have a good impression, and they got a bunch of money from the RNC and from other sources, and they dumped it all into downtown Cleveland. Well, where this church is in the 82nd block at Quincy on the east side of Cleveland, which if you know anything about Cleveland, that's a horrible area. There are bridges out that have been out for 15, 20 years. They just never fix them. They pay. There are no businesses or almost no businesses left in that area. A lot of vacant houses, and I don't know how much crime there is. I've been there half a dozen times to that church over the last year and a half, 2 years. I haven't seen evidence of crime, but I've seen what looks like it could be crime, ripe for crime, anyways. So one of the things that Al Sharpton said was, when they bring downtown to our town, that's when we'll know we're on a little more even playing field. So that's you. It's about time. It was your phone, my phone first.
I know.
Yours. That's good.
Yeah, weirdo.
So, anyways, the way he said that and the passion with which it was met was pretty impressive, and it's a point that hits home. I mean, money is not evenly spent. Potholes are not filled on the east side like they are downtown and on the near west side. Now, a lot of reasons for that. I'm not saying it's all racism. I'm saying, there's a lot of business downtown. There's no business in this other area. So I don't know which case. It's a chicken and egg thing. I don't know if there was no business, so they started to ignore it, or if they started to ignore it and all the businesses fled. And this has been going on since the Huff riots in 68. This is just, it's a problem for every city.
Especially the Rust Belt city.
Right. That's right. And every city has a bad part of town. Some cities have several bad parts of town.
Some cities are just bordered by
bad parts of town.
Bad
Yeah.
parts of
So, anyways, I went to see him, and I had paid attention. I had got on the newsletter on the email list at that church and get their newsletter and stuff, and I saw that that Cornell West was coming, and I called you and told you and said, "Hey, you want to go? I'm going to go." And Cornell West is somebody that I know that you really liked and thought a lot of and wanted to go. And he said that night that he was influenced by Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Karl Marx and
don't forget Sal Lozinski.
yeah.
But that's the only influence that a lot of people want to point out is the quote unquote communist.
Because it fits their agenda.
It
sure.
fits their narrative.
But his Toni Morrison and Eugene O'Neill,
and he referenced Maya Angelou that night.
Yep.
A lot of people who've influenced me, and I like their writings, I like their philosophies.
And just for those that don't know him, he's a frequent contributor on CNN and MSNBC.
He's also he has a PhD in theology.
In theology,
yes,
and Africana philosophy and history, and he is on the faculty at Yale Divinity School, at Harvard and Princeton, and talks a lot about religion, ethics, race, and the philosophy of democracy.
And what the book that he was promoting that night, and the one you bought me as a gift, and I thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome for that.
It's called Race Matters.
Yes, he had two. Race Matters has been out for about 15 years. The other one, his newest one, was Black Prophetic Fire.
Yes. Have you read that one yet?
I read part of it. I didn't read the whole thing.
Now, Race Matters, because it's been out for 15 years, and because we're dealing with this stuff right now. It's just, and you and I, like we said, we live three miles apart. And when you were growing up, when you went out, like when we went to junior high, did race matter to you?
I didn't think about it, so no, I never thought about it. I was never, my parents never talked about it. My circle of friends never talked about race.
And it was never an issue you dealt with in your personal day-to-day life.
What, with the struggle of being white? In a lily white community? No, I really had it okay there.
Okay. But you understand that, now that you've read the book, you understand that my daily existence, race mattered every day.
All day, every day, yes.
All day, every day.
Yeah, and I had no idea until you and I really started talking about it, and I read that book, and yeah, that's when I really began to be able to see from a different perspective what was going on.
Like what? Well, what is going on? What's going on? Marvin Gaye asked that question.
Marvin Gaye did ask that question, but that was about Vietnam.
That's true.
Yeah. What's going on is how we're all human. We're all member of the human race, but there are differences in our backgrounds, in our perspectives, in our foundations. No matter where you grow up, you and I could have the exact same education, the exact same income, the exact same live next door to each other in the same neighborhood, but one of us can get a cab in a big city and the other one can't. Or things like, there are things you're just
sure.
There are subtle things,
and those are all the subtle academic things that we hear talking heads talk about on radio shows. So let me tell you how race really matters. Okay.
Okay.
So you're raised by a father who grew up in Alabama. Okay, now he leaves Alabama at the ripe old age of 25, and early mid 50s, he leaves Alabama.
Okay.
So he brings with him that perspective of growing up and living in Alabama.
The South in the 50s.
Well, yeah, you got to remember, just through his childhood was the 40s and the 50s, right?
Yeah.
Okay, his coming of age years were the 50s. Early 20s were. I don't know, how old is he now? Oh my gosh, my dad's 80, right? So born in when was he born? Late 1920s, 1930s. So he brings with him that perspective, that perspective on race, and remember what that relationship was like between African Americans and people in the South, in the 40s and the 50s. So, so when he comes north, he brings that perspective with him.
You said Alabama, right?
Yeah,
next door to Mississippi, Emmett Till, 1955. That was,
Oh,
you know,
not,
that
you don't
really.
have to. You don't have to talk about Emmett Till to my father.
No, I know, but
but
I'm saying that really, I think, in a microcosm.
Sure, but once again, that's the academic version of it, okay? Because you're reaching for
That's
history.
all I know.
Exactly.
I don't know the experience. I know.
But
I
my
know
father, the names my father knows are not known to history.
of course not.
They were personal friends.
Sure.
They're personal friends. Okay, so he brings that perspective to it, and so he comes north, and ends up, settling in Warren, Ohio. He was on his way to Chicago, actually. His one of his brothers was in Chicago doing not too bad.
You get lost.
Well, no, his older brother was working at Republic Steel here.
Oh, here in Warren. Okay.
Here in Warren. So he stopped to visit, and his older brother convinced him, hey, stay here. There's a lot of jobs. Been to Chicago. We'll probably do better here. They could have a little garden. Chicago, you couldn't have that.
That's true. Yeah.
And they wanted that, and my uncle, uncle showed my father, where he was living. And believe it or not, it was one of the few places in Trumbull County where African Americans were allowed to buy property.
Where did they? Where on the?
In between Packard Electric and Wing United. It was called. They're called allotments. So you can buy lots that are 10 feet wide and 100 feet long. And the idea was you have to buy enough of them, big enough to put a house on. So they called them allotments. So we grew up in what we called allotment.
Was that when he bought that house before you were born? Correct.
No, he built that house when I was born.
Okay, so it was Howland Township.
It wasn't
Warren City yet.
No, it was Howland Township,
Okay.
right there, North River Road, in between.
Yeah.
Literally, I grew up on, the other side.
On the other side of the tracks, right there.
We like to say other side of two sets of railroad tracks, because once you went into our neighborhood to get to our house, you had to go across another set of railroad tracks.
That's right.
The tracks that went into Packard Electric.
Right.
So I literally grew up on the other side of two sets of railroad tracks.
And just for anybody's perspective, that's all manufactured. Or back in the day, that was a big
oh my gosh, all
manufacturing
manufactured.
area.
Oh my God, we played on. I can remember growing up and playing on some of the coils.
Oh yeah, the big steel coils.
Yeah, because the fence in the back of Wing United that backed up to our neighborhood, that fence had fallen down.
And those spools of cable wire that were back there. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to play on them all the time, dude.
Yeah.
That was one of our playgrounds growing up. Yeah, so my dad bought, it was like I said, one of the few places you could buy property if you're an African American in Trumbull County was, in that little allotment. So that's where my dad bought it. And so, here he comes from the South with a totally different perspective than I'm quite sure you and your parents were used to. Raising 10 kids and what you refer to as a lily white.
Yeah.
Lily white community.
Lily white community. How many black people lived over there? I mean, was it?
It was all black.
It was. It was all.
It was all black. Oh my God, dude! At one point there was a. Now that area and the Bolindale area of Howland were probably the only two areas that had African Americans.
Yeah, there weren't a whole lot of blacks in the Bolindale area either.
But a few.
But because that part of Howland, or where the black people lived in that part of the region, once you cross over, that's Warren City. So that was Warren City schools, not Howland Township schools.
Yeah, right there on 169.
Yeah, there were a couple black kids over there,
Right.
but not too many.
Yeah, so my dad, 10 kids, he raised 10 kids. You got to remember something. Before he got here, my aunt and uncle were like some of the first students to integrate Howland in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. Have you ever heard that story?
Was there a problem?
Well, the first day of school, my aunt and uncle have related this story to me on more than one occasion. They were beat about the head with school books, spit upon. My aunt's hair was just full of spit. The teacher had to take her in the bathroom and wash her hair. So the Civil Rights Movement, people like to believe because we were in the North,
Yeah.
that there was no problem with segregation. Yeah, my aunt and uncle were some of the first students ever to go to Howland High School as African Americans, and no, it was not a pleasant experience. And remember, by the time we met, that had already become part of my history.
Right.
Something you were completely unaware of.
Well, again, when I was 8 or 10 or whatever, in early around 1970.
Okay.
There-
Things
there
were better.
there-
All the race problems were over then.
Yeah, racial harmony.
Yeah, we had
existed.
racial harmony in the 70s.
From 69 on, there hasn't been a problem.
No.
No. Yeah. No, I remember
We could thank disco for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, love.
Yeah, love.
Yeah. The Bee Gees brought us
The
together.
Bee Gees brought us together.
It was there were still the Huff riots in the late '60s in Cleveland.
Sure.
Detroit was on fire.
Yeah, it's still on fire.
There were problems. I mean, things I would see on the news
Right.
that were covered. So I knew there were riots everywhere. That was like a
But so
pastime because there was no cable.
But right, so let me ask
So
you this.
people would go out and riot.
So let me ask you this.
But what year was the National Guard called into Warren Western Reserve High School?
Oh my gosh.
That was 70.
7?
No.
70,
74, 5, mid 70s,
73, 74?
something like that. There's a time when the armed soldiers were on a high school campus in Warren to keep the peace. I mean, can you imagine? So yeah, the problem of race was something that I was aware of, but only peripherally.
And that's a very important word. It was on your peripheral. It was on your TV screen, and it was a world away on the west side of Warren.
Yeah.
Even though the west side of Warren was what? From your house? Less than...
So 7 miles as the crow flies.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so
but
this
there was no reason for us to ever go there either.
Exactly.
There was nothing, there was no shopping.
This is why Dr. West says race matters.
Right. What Dr. West talked about in that book was the moral authority and racial debates concerning skin color and how economics and politics and ethical issues and religion and spirituality and the crisis, what he called the crisis in black leadership.
What black leadership?
Well, you know what? I don't know if that's fair. There are black leaders.
Who elected him?
Nobody.
Exactly. So how can they be my leader if I didn't elect them?
Well, there are white leaders that aren't elected.
Oh, you mean like community leaders?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Like your President Obama dude that,
President Obama dude.
before he was president,
He was a community organizer.
he was a community leader.
Community organizers are not leaders.
But they organize, they lead.
No,
sure they lead.
They push other leaders forward. If they're doing it correctly,
that's a role of leadership.
okay.
A Cub Scout leader
Okay.
is a leader.
Okay.
A PTA member is a leader. You don't
And
have to be elected.
And
to
in
be a
the
leader.
African community, we like to look at our pastors
Right,
as
pastors.
community. So Warren has what? 59, 60 some odd African American churches, and actually Pastor Johnson, who just ran for Trumbull County Commissioner,
Todd Johnson, yes.
Todd, was on the cover of the Tribune a couple Sundays ago, discussing this very issue.
I would
Did you read it?
no.
You should pull it up.
I would disagree that there are 60 black churches of any substance.
Well, he's referring to countywide. We're referring to
county.
No,
Yeah, but even then, I mean,
that's what his point was.
you get wait a minute, you get outside of the city of Warren, there aren't too many black communities.
Well, this is what his point was, okay? And you said of substance. He was referring to the smaller churches with 20, 25 members, and he referred to them as dying clubs.
Yeah.
Okay, basically you're waiting, you're basically waiting to hold the last funeral, that last person, okay? So, he made a suggestion that, these churches, get together and pool their economic, abilities together, and maybe they could do more for the community. Now, this is my problem. I agree with him all the way up until the point where he says pool your economic resources, okay? Because, now, are you familiar with Dr. Umar Johnson?
I'm sorry, with who?
Dr. Umar Johnson?
No.
No? Okay. Well, Dr. Johnson has a perspective that when you were talking about gentrification, Brooklyn,
Yes.
okay, believe it or not, African American churches participate in the gentrification of their own communities by taking the funds that they collect on Sundays and any other resources they have, depositing them into white banks, okay, and then those white banks are the banks that come along and finance the projects to gentrify their own communities. Now, we all hear the story about Black Wall Streets, all the Black Wall Streets that were burned down across the country, all the way from the 1920s, all the way as late up to the 1950s.
Okay.
Communities of color where African Americans had their own banks, their own businesses.
Yes.
Okay. And we took $1 and we would circulate it around the African American community 100 times, and then it would go to the white community or to another community. Okay.
Okay.
Today, you know how long $1 stays in the African American community? Once an African American gets $1?
It probably doesn't.
2 hours.
Yeah.
2 hours after an African American gets paid, that money leaves the African American community and then goes to either a white bank or a white business. It does not go to a black bank.
I would disagree that it's just white. because
well,
most of the little grocery stores, little bodega kind of places
In this
that are
city?
in
Yeah.
every city that are in a black neighborhood
are owned by minorities,
are owned by minorities other than blacks.
immigrants,
Whatever, whether
or
they're
whether
immigrants
they're
or not.
immigrants or not. Exactly. So, but even they bank at a white bank.
Okay.
Okay,
What makes a bank white or black?
not owned by an African American. Major stockholders are not, because banks are owned by stockholders.
Yes.
All right.
So look, about a quarter of the population of the city of Warren,
Correct.
is black.
Correct.
But how does that compare nationally? What is it, like 11 or 12% of the population of the U.S. is black?
Or I think you might be closer. Was it 11 to
Okay.
14%?
Let's say it's
17%?
15%.
Let's say it's 17.
Okay, so even if it's 20%, how many black banks do you think there should be?
Well, it's not. It's you know what?
Well,
It's,
why can't it just be a bank? Who cares?
Right.
Who
Because
cares who the
it's-
stockholder is?
is that bank going to invest in the hardest hit community?
No, they're going to invest in things that make money for their shareholders.
Exactly. Okay. So
I don't think when they're looking to invest, I don't think they see color. I don't think they look first
No, you're
at,
gonna-
hey, they got a lot of Negroes that live over there. Maybe we shouldn't invest there.
that used to be the case of redlining with real estate.
Okay, used to be, but you're talking 40 years ago.
You don't believe redlining happens now?
It does, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about banks and how banks are publicly held banks are chasing an investment that pays dividends.
Well, it's not going to happen.
What's not going to happen?
Well, because I know a couple people who looked into the fact that the west side of Warren doesn't have a grocery store, and the numbers just aren't there.
But why wouldn't they have a grocery store?
Because the numbers aren't there. It's
Right.
Like you said, it's a bad investment.
They did have a grocery store. They
Way
had
back
several.
when. Yeah, way back when.
But what happened?
Your customer base dries up and your insurance cost goes up because of crime.
Okay, so why don't the black people with any money at all open a business there?
That's a very good question for our black leaders.
Well, I can answer the question.
Well, because it's called black flight.
There's no profit to be made.
No, there's not, and it's called black flight. Successful black people don't stay, and they don't stay. They go to Howard. They go to Liberty.
But remove the word black.
Successful people, period, just don't
People
stay.
that with the means to leave.
Well, the show
got
is
out.
called Black and White. What do you mean remove the word black?
Well, but let's be realistic too. This isn't fantasy black and white.
It's not.
I'm gonna change the name of the show to gray, a mixture of black and white.
I want dark gray.
Dark gray. Okay, yeah,
Dark
of course
gray.
you do. Let's say it'll be 17% gray.
Okay, 17% gray.
All
Well,
right.
you can't.
So
grade
go on
that
with
gray.
your lesson here.
I totally agree with you. Okay, and so if African Americans are to be successful, okay, the only people in America who make money are the people who make profits. Let's get that straight.
Okay.
All right, no one's going to get rich doing 40 hours a week at $11.50 an hour.
Okay.
It's not going to happen.
I'll buy that.
All right, and these are not the lessons that we're taught as youth in our community.
That's right.
Okay, we're told to get a job, get a good paying job, hopefully one with a pension, and you'll retire. And you and I both know that the economic system has changed, and that doesn't work anymore.
It does. It has changed drastically.
Completely.
Yes.
Right. So, who's pushing African American children, other than being consumers, who's teaching them how to be entrepreneurs? So, like me and Kim McPherson, those 2 years we were volunteering up at Oak Hill Makerspace in Youngstown.
Yes.
We focused on teaching low to moderate income kids, because our focus should not be on skin color. It should be on
People.
Period.
That's all.
Right.
That's the only qualifier.
And the only qualifier to get into our class was that these would be low to moderate income.
See, I disagree with
kids.
that too, though.
Why? Because believe it or not, the rich kids from Poland and Canfield and Austintown don't need our assistance.
What if one of them wanted in?
We let them in?
Well, then
But
You're
they're not
making my
coming to.
point.
But they're not coming to the south side of Youngstown. Kids from Canfield and Boardman and Austintown aren't coming to the south side of Youngstown to take our Raspberry Pi class. And I basically lied. I take that back. I lied. We had a school teacher from Austintown take our Raspberry Pi class.
There you go.
But she took the knowledge and the information back to Austintown. So
which is the whole point.
exactly, but the kids don't have to come to us.
Right.
Because their educator came to us.
But why would you limit it to...
We don't limit it to... I didn't limit it to anything.
I understand.
No, let me finish. I don't run the Oak Hill Makerspace. I was merely a volunteer there.
I understand.
Their mission statement says that they will be servicing low to moderate income people on the south side of Youngstown because it's an extension of St. Patrick's Church, which is located on the south side of Youngstown.
Is that a white church?
It's a Catholic church. You could take it from there. But it has, believe it or not, there are black Catholics, Eric.
No.
Yes, Eric, there are black Catholics.
Where?
At St. Patrick's Church.
Do the white Catholics know?
Probably when they walk in, they don't
have separate services?
No, they don't.
All right. Okay. I'm really
No,
surprised.
they don't have separate services.
When the Pope finds out about this, there's going to be trouble.
Which Pope?
The Pope.
Pick one though.
No, the Pope.
The Pope. This one now?
The other one's retired.
This Pope is totally cool with
Stuff.
Things.
Yeah. He's the South American Pope.
He's the South American Pope?
Is. He's from South America.
He's the first South American
Yes.
Pope. He is. He is the first South American Pope.
I liked it when Father Guido Sarducci was running for Pope.
Well, everyone loves...
Did you know, by the way,
Father
did you
Guido
know the only
Sarducci.
qualification for Pope is that you're Catholic?
You
don't have to be a bishop.
a cardinal?
You don't have to be a cardinal.
No?
Nope.
Really?
You just have to be Catholic. You don't even have to be a priest. You just have to be Catholic.
So why do they have to go through that whole convoluted selection process?
You're saying it wrong. It's a convention. It's not convoluted. It's a convention of
convoluted.
cardinals.
Okay, it's a convoluted convention of cardinals.
Yes.
Okay, but so you're telling me that? So then, that means when they go into that room, they could come out and say Guido Sarducci.
They could come out and say Eric Thompson from Warren, Ohio.
You're not Catholic.
No, but if I was Catholic.
But you're not.
But if I was, they could pick me.
I'd rather have Guido because he is Catholic.
Yeah, but he's too old.
Is he?
Yeah.
They have a history of picking really old people.
He's not even touring anymore. I mean, he's not doing anything public. He's
No.
not. I don't think his health is good. But regardless, they could. If I converted to Catholicism, I could be the Pope. I might have to get rid of my wife
Why?
because I don't think you can be married and be a Pope.
Them popes used to be married. I think they got rid of being married when they kept giving the church's property away to their wives and their kids.
Well, when you get divorced, you have to give half of everything to your spouse. And if you're the Pope and you own the whole,
she
you
gets
don't
half
want,
the church.
No, you don't want that. You don't want that. But regardless, that's how the Pope thing works. So if I guess we're not too far off from having a gay black Pope.
Wow, I'm not touching that.
Okay, I'm just saying the new. Pope,
Why does the first pope who's gay have to be black?
I don't know.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Are you asking me why people are gay?
No, I'm asking why you married up the first gay pope would be.
Because we're just going to crash all these glass ceilings all on the same day. Maybe to be a woman too.
Maybe to be a transgender.
Oh, that's perfect.
Go now, do it.
Transgender, gay, black woman
who
pope.
used to be a male.
Who used to be a man. That's transgender. Yes.
So you hit all of them.
Yeah, and if she was a Vietnam veteran, she'd qualify for all kind of grants.
All right. I don't know how many people you didn't offend in that sentence, but there's going to be a lot of backlash for that one.
The Jews. I left out the Jews.
You can't cram
that's right.
into that. You already made them Catholic. Now you can't make them Jewish.
They could convert
from
Judaism to Catholicism.
So now we have the first formally
because look,
Jewish.
You get 8 nights of Hanukkah, but you don't get all the gifts. I'm telling you, Christianity's the way to go in the gift-giving season.
Well, why? You only get gifts on one day in Christmas, too.
Yeah, but you get a ton of gifts.
Oh, Hanukkah, you only get one?
Oh, Hanukkah, they get crappy gifts.
How do you know?
Because I know Jews.
Name one.
Name a Jew?
Why not? It's like, okay, people
Goldberg.
say... No. One that you know, it's like, I have black friends.
No, well, not plural, but...
You have one?
Just you.
Really?
We're still friends, right?
That makes me like a token?
I suppose.
Well,
I don't have the opportunity to have a lot of black friends.
Why? Because they don't black carpet?
those are customers.
Oh, those are
I mean,
customers.
sometimes customers become friends, but yes, 26% of the people of Warren
Don't like purple.
are black.
No.
So 26% of my friends should be black?
No, because it's less than, let's say 24%, and half of them.
You're going to argue with me over 2%? Jesus, come on.
If we're in a negotiation, I'd argue with you.
We're
over
not in
2%.
negotiation. I'm not buying them.
Oh, I guess I'm channeling the guy in the White House right now. I think it's a negotiation. And I heard 2%.
Everything is a negotiation.
Is it?
Everything in life is a negotiation.
I think
This
you're right.
conversation has been a negotiation.
I know, because you keep holding up your hands going, don't talk.
No, I said don't hit the thing because you're making too much noise.
Well-
Ambient noise.
You haven't hushed. Well, never mind. It is a negotiation. Everything in life
is a negotiation.
Even dinner is a negotiation.
Sure. Where do you want to go for dinner, honey? Well, I don't care. Well, how about if we go to the Brown Derby?
I don't want to
No,
go.
I don't want that.
So wait a minute.
So you said
Wait,
you didn't care.
you didn't care. I love this conversation.
Yeah,
If
we
you
have.
Don't care.
Everybody has this.
Every married couple has.
Well, how
this
about Burger
conversation.
King? No, I don't want that. Well,
That's
where do you
not
want,
dinner.
Where do you want to go? I don't care. Well, how about the buffet? No, I don't want to go there. I don't like that.
Oh, buffets are bad.
Well-
I quit doing buffets years ago.
Did you?
Oh my
You
gosh!
can talk to me about germs,
I saw it.
cooties.
It was horrible, man. It was
right.
bad. It was bad. I used to love the Chinese buffets too, until it was a Dateline.
All right, listen. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about the cockroaches.
Oh,
I
it
don't want
wasn't
to hear about the
cockroaches.
bacteria.
It was just how much actually bacteria is
the
on there.
cooties. And you're going to tell me there's cooties? The Chinese people have cooties?
No, I'm just going to
That's
say
the one
no.
race we had left to offend. We hadn't even entered Asia yet with our offense initiative. And you had to, we're almost out of time. Oh, well, we better get the Asians.
We left out all the Europeans.
Well, listen. I think we need to draw this sucker to a close. I will tell you that it has benefited me greatly once I started to look at things from the perspective of everyone, not just other people like me. So when I started to look at and started to attend a service at a black church, or a big city black church at that.
We're going to finish telling people about our day with Dr. Cornel West.
Let's do that.
Yeah, we
So
will.
that's what I'm saying is spending time with Cornel West and spending time after his presentation talking to him.
And if it
sitting
weren't-
there at that table talking to him was very enlightening
And
as
if
well.
it weren't for your change of perspective, I would have never gotten the invitation to go.
That's right. I wouldn't have known about it. I wouldn't have paid
Right.
attention. I would have said, look, another black guy speaking at a black church.
Whoopee!
Yeah, who cares?
But remember, he had Nina Turner with him too.
Well, she goes to everything at that church, I think. I don't think she was with him. I think she was in attendance.
remember what the message was.
And Nina Turner is
Remember
a former representative
and
of,
she's
in-
number
from
she's
Ohio,
number
from
two.
the Cleveland area.
She's number 2 at the Ohio Democratic Party right
Right.
now. She's their token.
Well, there you go then. A woman and black?
But you know what? She's that token that bit them. Because they thought she would toe the party line.
Oh.
And then she backed Bernie.
Yeah.
And then after Bernie lost, she backed Jill Stein.
Yeah.
But, the ideal of, you can't just...
You can't always get what you wanted, but if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need.
And sometimes you need a woman like Nina Turner in your life pointing out your mistakes.
Yeah, I was just thinking that this morning. I need a black woman to come around and start telling me what's wrong with me. You know what I lack in my life?
What?
A lot of black women telling me what's wrong with me.
I got 13 sisters. You want to borrow one?
No. I'm friends with some of your sisters. I do have black women in my life that tell me what's wrong with them. They're your sisters.
Yeah, exactly. Don't feel bad. Okay,
right.
So I'm James.
Wait, are you done telling me about Cornel West? What'd you take away from that?
Well, he didn't like my position on the election.
No, he didn't. He didn't like he didn't like the candidate that you were supporting.
No, after Bernie lost his path, after he lost the Pennsylvania primary, I capitulated and supported Hillary Clinton.
Right. How'd that go, by the way? How'd that turn out?
Not good. But
Okay.
you remember what he said about Hillary Clinton? No, my brother. She's an evil, evil woman.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
he did.
He called her an evil, evil woman. But we still got evil in the White House.
No, we're not. But we're not having that conversation.
You're right.
We're talking about Cornel West.
You're right. We are.
Here's a man who, during that presentation, said, "You gotta know your roots before you know your route."
I know
and
my
he's
roots.
saying, no, I'm not talking to you.
Right.
He was talking to the congregation. And he said, you got to know where you've been before you know where you're going. And that I took that away, man. That was
and for
was
you,
wonderful.
let me ask you this. So basically, where you've been, and because you and I come from the same place, pretty much.
Pretty much. Different neighborhood, but same community.
Exactly. So, while we were like, walking the path of coming of age together, like Stand By Me, 15, 16. Mm-hmm. And obviously you've already admitted that your perspective on where we came from just changed a wee little bit.
Just changed?
Or let's say has been in...
It's changed, and it's changed, I would argue, wee little bit. I mean, it's changed drastically just over the last, 5 or 10 years. Working in the entertainment industry, mm-hmm. I've learned a lot and seen a lot of things from the perspective of Jewish people, black people, poor people, wealthy people. I mean, I've gotten to meet
and what's
a
the
lot
takeaway?
Of everybody.
What's the takeaway?
The takeaway of
based on race matters.
That my view was too narrow, and the view and everybody. But I would argue that everyone's view is too narrow, because the Puerto Rican guy sees things from a Puerto Rican perspective. The black guy sees things from a black perspective. The Asian guy sees things from an Asian perspective. When he's not sick from the buffet.
Okay.
And white people, being the overwhelming majority of the population of the U.S., the whites see things from a white perspective. Now I understand. How can you not? But I think we all need to come out of our shell a little bit. Listen, I've traveled around the world and learned a lot about the United States from the perspective of others. When I went to the museums in Cuba that talked about their revolution and how they had to fight the United States, those were perspectives of things that we didn't talk about in school.
No, because you saw yourself as an aggressor and not.
Well, I saw myself as an American.
Well, no, in their history.
In their history, yeah.
We are the aggressor. We are not the freedom fighters that we've always,
and even if our heart was in the right place in some of those instances,
their museum doesn't reflect that, does it?
No, it's a Cuban perspective.
Exactly.
And the only thing that I wish I had more of in the Cuban perspective was their music.
Or their ability to dance.
Yeah, or they speak Spanish pretty good too. I don't
know. I would take that. I would like. I'm not really good with languages.
Not even the English language. I'm just saying.
That's up for debate. That is something for another conversation.
So, what did you take away from Cornell, from Dr. Cornell West?
Oh, he and I agree on one very important issue, and that's neoliberalism. Okay, and neoliberalism is a threat to not just the Democratic Party; it's a threat to African Americans, and it's a threat to basically people's. Is it a threat to liberties? I don't know. Okay, so this is this is African. This is Black History Month, right?
Oh, that's right. It is.
Okay.
By the way, can I just point out that the white people gave you Black History Month,
and that's
and we gave you the shortest month because we don't want to have to put up with it more than 28 days.
And this is my point about neoliberalism. Okay, so we fight for, or our quote unquote black leaders fight for, Black History Month and Martin Luther King Day. Force people to do something that they don't want to do, okay, which is, celebrate someone that they don't want to celebrate on his birthday, and that's okay.
Except in Arizona.
So you're forcing people to accept this holiday. You're forcing people to accept this month. Then black people claim victory because we got African History Month. And what did it do for us?
It gave you Black History Month.
Yeah, and what did it do for us?
I don't know. 1/12 of the year, you get to
exactly. And this is what really just makes me mad. It's not Black history. The story of Crispus Attucks is not Black history. It is American history, and it should be taught and learned every single day. Now,
I would agree with that.
Let's pull up, if you want to pull up the interview that Larry King did with Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, I remember that quote from him. Yes,
right. Samuel L. Jackson asked Larry King, "Do you want a Jewish History Month?"
Right.
Larry King says, No.
Right.
Samuel L. Jackson says, why not?
Because he wants every month to be everybody's history.
Exactly. It's not Black history. It's not
Right.
Spanish history.
It's just history.
It's American history.
Right.
All of it is American. And by us celebrating Black history, we are needlessly separating ourselves from the very thing that we want to be a part of.
That's right.
And so I do not celebrate Black History Month.
But you condone it.
I condone it. I condone anyone adding knowledge.
Right.
I condone anyone
And from
adding
that
knowledge.
perspective, Black History Month has done that. Black History Month has forced white people a narrow view of something that I would have never looked into that comes on television as a part of a news coverage or a public service announcement during regular programming. There's something about Black history, just like at Christmas time they talk about Hanukkah, they talk about Kwanzaa. So I get to expand my base of knowledge a little bit.
Exactly. But what Black History does is say from March 1st all the way up until January 31st, the accomplishments of people of color can be ignored in our schools, of all places, in our schools, because it's only taught 1 month of the year.
But you know what? A lot of the accomplishments of white people are ignored by our schools too.
Because that's just sheer volume and you can't fit it all in.
Well, you can't fit all the black people in either, so we'll do a little extra 1 month, and at least they didn't make it in July when the schools are closed.
Or do they do it a little bit every month, or they just don't do it at all except during the month of February? I don't know. I don't have children, and we were talking about that before. That's one perspective I don't have.
Do you want some kids? Because I got a couple.
At 55 now, Eric, you know what? That boat has sailed.
All right.
I mean,
speaking of boats sailing,
it's about time to go.
I'm going to get on my boat and sail.
I'm going to
peace out.
Because this is Eric and James. And what's the name of the show?
Listen, it's Black and White with James and Eric. If you say Eric first, then you got to say white first, and nobody wants to hear white and black. Nobody went out and bought a white and black TV.
No, they didn't. They bought a black and white TV.
Well, first they bought colored TVs, but you guys don't want to be called colored anymore.
That was probably the worst thing we were ever called.
Hey, it's Black and White with James and Eric. Peace out.
See ya.